right, so we're recording now.
Yes, it's official.
Hi, Guadalupe. Hi, Lippy. Hi. Hi, Karen.
It's Karen and Jeff. Hi. And we have a...
How you doing, guys?
Good. How are you,
Hi.
Jeff?
Rebecca,
doing
I
well.
lost my screen. I have to get off and get back on. I don't know what I did.
Okay, that's
It's-
fine. We'll wait.
Yeah, it's snowing up here again, so
Oh, wow.
Okay.
yeah. So
Are you okay, Dana? Or do
No, yeah,
Yeah, I found everybody. Hi.
how is it like in Pennsylvania, Alex?
it's like 75 the other day, and then now it was snowing this morning. Now it's just rain and the typical rain and snow, and Tracy called it it's chunky rain this morning.
Yeah, there's so much terminology for weather out there.
Yeah.
What do they call the swirling snows? Spurl, something with SP? Like,
A squall.
yes, thank you, a squall.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's when it goes like this, right, Alex? It's snowing, but
Yeah,
like in a circle.
I think so. I don't even, I mean, it's just like, I bought a snowblower this year, and I used one, and I used it once. So I don't know.
It's a whole other language you have to learn to live on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us on a Wednesday. We're happy to do these lunch and learns each week with you and connect. So thank you for taking the time, and I'll just add everybody as they come in to welcome and hello to all of those who are watching on YouTube after the fact. We hope you enjoyed today's lunch and learn. A couple Zoom rules for those of us today. If you're new, or as a refresher, please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We recommend speaker view for presentation. Video sharing is optional, though we love to see all your smiling faces. And please type all questions and comments into the chat. We will have a Q&A at the end with our guest speaker for the last 10 to 15 minutes, where you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask any question you'd like, or you can type in the chat and I can read it out loud for you. A quick update from Autism Tree. We've reached over 670,000 people on all of our social media channels since March of 2020, when the pandemic first hit. We started tracking our numbers, and this is global impact that we are able to reach, which has been incredible. During the pandemic. We've done 71 lunch and learns to date. Today is actually our 72nd lunch and learn ever. All of these are recorded and put on our YouTube channel, so you can go back, and we use them as resources all the time for our parents and families and community. So I highly recommend checking the other ones out. Since January 2022, we've coordinated 25 events and have 40 coming up. These are both in-person and virtual events that are happening. We were able to transition 19 of our 20 programs virtually, and we're slowly bringing them back, some in-person, mostly outdoor events, so our families can get together and in our community. We have 443 videos on our YouTube channel, so please subscribe today if you haven't. Our YouTube community is growing every week. We have posted 382 of those videos since March 12th of 2020. And I will pass it off to Dana Hoff, who's our volunteer executive director, and she'll introduce our special guest speaker.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's so nice to be here with everyone. And I've said this so many times since the Lunch and Learn started with you all. And that is that I think there's no accidents. I think it's no accident that today our special speaker is Alex Shepler. I was telling him on the pre-call a few things. And one is that without any hesitation, he is one of my favorite ATPF fathers. And I'm talking about on one hand, including, of course, my own husband, Todd, who's I'm not sure is on the call today. He's going to try to come, Alex, if he can. But, you know, I just have so many great memories, Alex, with you and your family since the very beginning. From the really how it all started is a phone call from your wife when you guys were at Camp Lejeune. So I will never forget that. And I think what's, you know, really important that I've shared, and I feel like when I share something, it must be for a reason. And I'm always encouraging everyone during Lunch and Learns to share whatever you like to when we come to the more interactive end of our Lunch and Learn. But what I want to share is that every year I kind of work on something, and I don't call it you know, New Year's resolutions. I don't do that. I just kind of think of something like, what am I going to kind of check in on every day that I care about working on? And when Rebecca and I kind of discussed it together, I told her I really want to work on being centered. And what does that look like for me every day with Autism Tree means that I'm centered back on what is the core mission of Autism Tree. It's always been about one family at a time. And I just think it's so important for everyone to know that after 19 years, that is something I'm getting back centered on. I have my tree right here and have Alex coming on today, and just wanting you to know, Alex, that that is what I'm centered on. And it makes so much sense that you're here today. I do not know every family in the Autism Tree family like I know your family. But in the early days, the first 10 years, I did know people's families, their, you know, and it's such a luxury. I've been to Alex's house and I know his pets and I know his children, and feel like his wife is one of my closest friends and has ran our parent mentor program after I finally was able to kind of let go of it, because it was a program that I worked the hardest on really in the last 19 years. And when I stepped away from it to have someone lead it, it was Alex's wife, Tracy. So, and I know many of you have met Tracy on the Lunch and Learns, but it's quite a gift, Alex, to have you here today, and just to say what an amazing father you are. And I have literally no memory of you not being at an event, an ATPF event, and being present. And I don't know how you did that, because Alex is in the Marine and I have seen him be deployed more times than I can count, and be involved in things to serve our country in more ways than I can list. And yet the truth is, there's not even one time that I've been with you, which is countless over the past a decade, that you have not been present. And I think that's fully remarkable given everything about you as a human being. I don't know how you did it, but it's something I admire, and it's something I've actually worked on in past years, is that very thing, being present. So with being present with you today, I'm really grateful that Rebecca put together a couple of slides for fun to kind of look at throwback photos. I love seeing you guys in 2013, the far left, at our 10-year gala at the Hard Rock Hotel, which was the fundraiser that helped us bring Lisa Kaufman on, our first full-time employee back then. And next to that is the wrap party that I was mentioning earlier. That was at Dr. Sanchez's house. And next to that is the two pictures of our first 1,000-person luncheon in 2016 and our second one. That's Alex and his wife, Tracy. And then next slide is from our Padre games, a family night. The fundraiser that Glenn Lasker did is in the middle. That was at a winery. And then the far right on the 2019 is kind of fun, because I took that photo at their house in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because Todd and I were living in Pennsylvania back then. So that's a really fun memory for me to see that photo. And you can go ahead and bring it back up, and just know, Alex, that I really adore your whole family, and I'm really honored to introduce you to your Autism Tree family. If you see Guadalupe Miranda up there, she is our newest employee, and I'm glad to introduce you to her. And I think you know Rebecca. Rebecca was trained by Lisa and has been at the helm since Lisa left. And Jeff Snyder is very involved with Autism Tree. He's been an integral part of our neuroscience conference. He's been on our Living Autistically panel. He's an advocate on a global scale now, and does a lot of work with us, and has been a huge part of our Lunch and Learn since the day we started. And he's actually on the East Coast of Massachusetts. So I want to make sure that I introduce you, Jeff, to Alex Shepler while you guys are on here. And I don't know who else is on here. That's all I can see. Who else is on here, Rebecca?
We have Garrett Hoff.
Hi, Garrett. Where are you?
I'll do a gallery.
I'm here. I'm in DC. Hello.
Hi. I'm glad you made it. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure Todd might be coming on too, Alex. He does say hello. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and just say thank you so much for being with us.
I'm gonna unmute you. There we go.
Okay, I just did it.
Good.
Hope, can you hear me? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay, anyway, my name is Alex Shepler. And thank you for that great intro, Dana. That was like very humbling, and you know, I'm kind of shy about stuff like that. I think you asked me to do this one time before, and I think I was going through some kind of craziness or something, and I'm glad I could do this. Anyway, yes, I love the photo that you put up. That was from my last combat deployment, with probably the best unit I was with, but I could tell it was at the beginning of my deployment because I was smiling. Usually most guys are not, and gals are not smiling at the end of the deployment. And I am a father of an adult child on the spectrum, and I'm going to tie this in to that and how we got to know Dana and the ATPF. So Dana kind of did the intro. In the intro, that we met over the phone. I was in Iraq, my last combat deployment, and I found out I was getting orders to the West Coast, Coronado. And this was kind of, professionally, it was not a very good thing for me, but physically and mentally, it was a good thing, because I had been injured during that deployment, and they knew I needed a break from the combat deployment cycle back then in 2000, well, you know, mid 2000s. So I went to teach at a schoolhouse in Coronado. It's a joint, you know, the amphibious base there, and we met Dana I think we went to a couple of events, and then we had a moment with our son who he had to be hospitalized, inpatient. You know, he was, you know, what is he, about 7 or no, about 8 when we moved out there. Yeah, I think that's about right. And he was going through some issues. So we were going through some issues as parents. We, you know, share the brunt of it. And Dana brought over a big pot of chili for us, and I thought that was amazing. And like Dana and I were talking last week, I guess, and it's amazing how one bowl, you know, pot of chili will give you like a lifetime, you know, family, friends, you know, inclusion. And it's just really sweet that in 2022 we're still involved, and we live 2,000 miles away, so that is great. Let me circle, not to, this is a horrible, let's circle back. All right, I watched a few of these, trying to get the format down, and just not so I would step all over myself and make a complete fool of myself, and people could watch it on YouTube long after I'm gone. But so hopefully I don't mess that up. How I think we wanted to talk about resiliency for parents of kids with that are on the spectrum. Now, everybody's situation is different, and my situation is different from Dana's situation, and everybody's situation is different. Every kid with that is on the spectrum is different. So, you could take it from my experience. That's all I can speak from. And what I came back in the Marine Corps in 2003, shortly after, well, about a year and a half after 9/11, and started the deployment cycle right away. In between one of my deployments, I met a woman, Tracy, my future wife, and we dated. And my son was almost 6 years old then. And it was, I've never known what autism really is until then. It was a challenge. Being a stepdad is a challenge. Being a stepdad to a kid who's got Asperger's or who's on the spectrum is definitely a challenge. What I've had to look into myself is, figuring out what can I change and what can I change? What do I have control over? What don't I have control over? And we spoke a little bit about that. We would have challenges. I would think, well, how hard is it parenting a kid with autism? It's pretty, it could be very challenging, especially as a stepfather. The main thing that we've really tried to instill with our son is not letting a diagnosis define who they are as a person. What do I mean by that? Well, don't make it so, all right, some doctor says you have, learning disabilities or autism, or acknowledge that and say, what, there are challenges. There's going to be challenges here, but saying, all right, that's my new baseline. I feel that we can't move beyond that baseline. It's just bunk, in my opinion. I mean, everybody is struggling, everybody you meet, and lately more so. And just like using kindness and not sometimes, 20 years in the Marine Corps, I have a harsh side. I've really had to temper that harsh side and become more patient with a lot of things. And is it frustrating? I'm sure it's frustrating for everyone. It could be very frustrating for a parents with children with ASD. I don't pretend to know what everybody's going through or understand what everybody's going through. All I can do is not get overwhelmed with what's going on in my life and still be kind to other people. And it's difficult. I mean, it is difficult. Anybody who's ever honked their horn in traffic and gotten the finger, in return, I'm sure, some people don't go, oh, bless you. No, it's usually, oh, go, yourself too. But I don't, being kind it's a challenge for some people. That goes back to the golden rule. I think we learned that in kindergarten, I'm pretty sure. If we don't utilize that golden rule, and what is, even for me, what gives me joy, so, all right, I know I'm going different ways here.
You're doing great, Alex. Don't sweat it at all.
All right.
Yeah, we're following.
All right. Okay. So I think the big thing with my son, I'm just gonna say Derek, even though he said he didn't want to be named. The thing that really has got me, sometimes I want to quit. Sometimes I'd be like, I mean, it's just, sometimes it's so overwhelming. Thankfully not lately, but throughout my time. And I think what I've figured out eventually, and is somebody told me a long time ago, when you're overwhelmed, when I was feeling really overwhelmed, I think it was when I was in the Marine Corps. I was a commanding officer. I was like, this situation is so messed up. I had a big, I was getting a new job. I was transferring to a new unit, and that unit was completely out of whack, completely messed up. And I went and did an advanced survey of it, and I was in shock at how screwed up it was, and how much work that I had ahead of me. And this colonel came up to me, and he's like, "Gunny, how you doing?" I was like, "Well, sir, I have a lot of work to do here." And he's like, "Well, you know how you eat an elephant, right?" I'm like, "Huh?" He's like, "One bite at a time," and he walks off. So I remember that, and I think it's important to it goes back every greatest journey ever taken starts out the first step, and it's you take one step over the other, and then you finish this journey. And I think I learned that early on, that sometimes life is not a race, but it's who could make it through the endurance part of it. So don't ever quit. And that's the other thing that in the military that I've taken is don't ever quit. That's the only way you really fail in the military, other than injury, or and that's something you can't help, but don't ever quit. And I've seen the smallest people, the most non-physical type of people make it through some of the most arduous training imaginable. And you would think that they would have washed out the first week, but they make it. And then you have these huge, like super fit people that don't even make it the first week. And it's all up here. It's a mindset. And if I apply that to other things in life, there's really nothing that can be stopped. Now, I do want to put a little caveat on don't ever quit. If if something's causing harm, it's obvious, it's time to maybe change or pivot the journey, and that is something that I've had to do. Post Marine Corps retirement, I was working 3 days after I retired. I was working as a federal police officer for the Department of Veterans Affairs in San Diego. Tracy got a job here in Pennsylvania. She had her father was sick at the time, so we needed to get out here, spend more time with him before he passed. And I got here, and it is completely different. The job was horrible. COVID hit. Working conditions got even worse, and so it was causing harm to me and my mental health, and to my family, who was, the kids were locked down, not going to school, not leaving the house. They needed parental advice. So I pivoted, and I had to resign, and that is probably one of the best decisions that I made since leaving the Marine Corps. the issue is I couldn't watch the harm that my profession at the time was causing to me and my family. So what I did, I tried to get different hours, more acceptable hours, instead of like 12, 12 hours straight, all night long, and not seeing the family for several days is more like being a Marine Corps to maybe a 9-to-5 job. They wouldn't hear it, so I resigned. That's what people have to do. I mean, it's a individual choice. I'm sure everybody's who's worked in the professional career, any professional career for that matter, has had to make those choices. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, I've never really met a resilient person that I look up to as being resilient and that I learned from, like maybe, them being my mentor, who has had an easy past, I mean, that's not to say somebody has to grow up in the worst imaginable place, but there are people that have difficult pasts, that you look at them and you would think, wow, they really have everything put together. And but then you get to know them and wow, they really have a lot more, like, I'm not gonna say issues, but events in life that made them more resilient. And and I always like to, like, all right, let's break out what made them more resilient. I mean, was it the attitude? Was it just like maybe they have it in their DNA? And I think it's like, when, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever felt, and probably they have in the past, with the pandemic and now with Ukraine, it's almost you just want to like curl up in a ball and turn off the lights and put a really like comfy like quilt over you, and hopefully it will be over. But that's not really realistic, in my opinion. And that goes back to not letting a situation define me as a person. And I gotta admit, I mean, with COVID, we were so fortunate. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love California, love San Diego, but we were very fortunate. We were moved in here when they shut down everything, because the restrictions here were not near as bad as California. So I was grateful for that. I was also grateful that, I was a first responder then. So I was one of those essential people. And I was not restricted either. So, I mean, my movements were not restricted. What I would see is a lot of people really struggling with, and they still are trying to get back to normal. Everything is kind of like everybody. I think Hawaii is the last state that had the mandatory masking lifted or something like that. But I still see people they're pretty, they're still pretty scared about it, and that's it's tough. I talked to somebody the other day, and they still don't really leave their house very often, and I hope that they get help with that. It's not healthy at all. All right, so I think I'll go back to my history a little bit more. When I mentioned I was injured my last deployment, and that's pretty much one of the reasons why I was no longer combat deployable. Then they made me a formal schoolhouse instructor in Coronado, which is not a bad gig at all. But I was having a lot of medical issues then. I found out subsequently later that when I did injure myself, and I took a tumble down a concrete embankment along the Euphrates River, but I cracked a vertebrae when I did that. So subsequently, after a couple, about 2 or 3 years after, yeah, so it was about 2012, 2013, I had open back surgery where they fused vertebrae and took out a bunch of chunks of bone and stuff like that. The recovery for that was difficult. There's a lot of physical pain, and I was struggling to finish a career in the Marine Corps. I had to pass a physical fitness test and a combat fitness test about 2 years after my surgery, or else I had to find a new job. Do not collect your 20-year retirement pension, and do not pass go. So that's what I was working on physically for probably about 3 years post surgery. I had to do that, and I did it. It was not pleasant, but I did it. And I was thinking, going back to the resiliency, it's one of those things where it's like, how bad do you want it? And I knew that, all right, if I were able to finish a career in the Marine Corps, it would open up more doors for me as far as, well, firstly, financially. There is no such thing as a pension anymore, except for the military. And I don't even think they do it the way they did it when I retired a couple of years ago. So I had all this time in. I wanted to finish. I had like 5 years left, 20 to finish. So that was important to me and my family. And Tracy at the time was finishing her graduate school and her doctorate, and it was her turn to really take her career, and it was my turn, kind of like, hey, all right, you spent all that time playing Marine, as she said, you get to take charge of watching our adolescent kids. So that was kind of the deal we had. So that was important. Finishing out 20 years was important for that. What I'm doing now, well, is I am a substitute teacher at the local school district here, and it's got me more interested in teaching and how curriculum is taught, especially like in public school systems. A lot of it, I believe, has to do with it goes all the way back to the Industrial Revolution, where regions, the schools in the regions, the governments in the regions were pretty much run by huge corporations, and the schools taught subjects that would relate to manufacturing and the industrial.
Hello, Carlos.
The industrial.
Sorry.
They go back to the industrial needs of the region. So I saw a need. I'm like, this is crazy. We're in 2022, and I have a feeling that there's some school districts here in Pennsylvania, for that matter, that probably still teach steelmaking, and steelmaking hasn't been a thing here since the 70s. So why are they even teaching this in science, or social studies? I don't know. So I'm getting into that. So I am taking graduate courses in STEM education at the local state college here, and we'll see where that goes. Other than that, I'm also like everyone is probably really, really disturbed what's going on in Ukraine. In fact, I told Dana, I was like, you hope you don't mind, I may plug another organization, not-for-profit organization, and that would be that would be, oh shoot, I can't even remember. I lost my train of thought. That would be aerialrecovery.org. What they're doing, their primary focus right now is getting orphans and children out of Ukraine, mainly from the over 4 major children's hospitals in Ukraine. And they're doing that, but they need resources. You Google it, aerialrecovery.org, check them out. I've worked with one of the people involved. Actually, I grew up with one of the people that are involved in it. He's a retired Israeli IDF soldier. He's American, but he's also dual citizenship. So he runs security for mosques and synagogues here in the United States. They provide that free. But now they're into doing humanitarian missions in the Ukraine. That's what I could do. I can't do anything. I can't try to change Putin's mind. I can't change Joe Biden's mind about anything. Going on Facebook and complaining and stuff like that. Yeah, okay. I don't know if that does any good either, other than picking a fight with somebody who has a different political view than you. And so that's kind of a waste of time. So what I can do is try to, raise money or by word of mouth, and saying, what, check out this organization. If you're looking, to buy, individual first aid kits, they always need those, stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff on their website that they need in order to do this mission. They got a mission, 10-day mission to Poland next month. So, and it's so that's what I could control. And it's just one of those weird things as far as resiliency. I never thought of myself as like resilient per se. I didn't really even know what that meant until maybe, I don't know, my last combat deployment. And then they had the mandatory mental health checkups and stuff like that. And they called it like, resiliency 101 or something like that. But I mean, I have seen a lot of my friends, not do too well from PTSD and other stuff after, coming back. And I was involved. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs and try to make a difference for veterans. San Diego, I felt like I was. I mean, there's a lot of veterans in need in San Diego. Here, don't get me wrong, there's still veterans in need here, but it's just a lot less homeless, a lot less substance abuse, a lot less crime. So there's not a lot for me to do for veterans as a law enforcement officer. That was another deciding factor in what I was getting from my job here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. As far as resigning, it's like if I had a big need, if I felt like I was really needed at work, then I probably would have stayed. If the veterans really needed me, but we actually had I think I pulled over 2 veterans here after the second traffic stop. I'm like, all I'm doing is making their life even worse, They're coming here for medical care and I'm pulling them over for going 5 miles over the speed limit. You know, this is ridiculous. I'm not helping veterans. So time to get a new job. Anyway, what Dana, that's all I really have. I hope I didn't do it too short. So
No, you know, we always send out a follow-up, you know, to our whole Lunch and Learn database, and we'll put in the link to the foundation that you talked about to help the children that are very sick that they're trying to rescue from Ukraine. I was telling Alex on our pre-call that I've been watching that. I had really not watched any news all the pandemic, and now I can't stop watching the children. And I did see them doing the rescue from exactly what Alex is talking about. Has some of it's been televised, the actual how sick the children are, and they're trying to get them out. And I think it's just terrifying. I don't think I'm alone. I don't know. I would be curious what percentage of Americans are glued to their TV and can't stop watching this insanity. But I'm very grateful that you brought forth an example of people that are going in and trying to help. And I understand they're going into Poland because Americans, Alex was telling me, of course, Americans we cannot get into Ukraine, but we can get into Poland. And for those of you that don't know, Dr. Novak has a home in Krakow, Poland, and is hugely involved with Poland. And I haven't even been able to talk to her at all during this because she's here in the States still, but that is, her every waking moment is part of that. So we pretty much, most of our doctors at Autism Tree are very much involved in humanitarian efforts. So I was really honestly blessed by having Alex share that with me on the pre-call and wanted him to share it with everyone. I would love if anyone wants to ask Alex any questions. I want to share one little known fact that I didn't find out until I was having, I think, beers with you, Alex, to remind me, but somehow I didn't know that Alex grew up as a young boy on the same street as Mr. Rogers. I think it was because we were talking about the Mr. Rogers movie. And then Alex was like, oh, I grew up on the same street. And I just had a heart attack. How do I not know that? That's such cool trivia. So there's a lot of fun things about Alex. I'm sure I don't even know, but that's one I certainly wanted to share. Go, Gare.
Go ahead, Gare.
Yeah, hi Alex. Thank you for sharing. It was very passionate, and
hey, Garrett.
So my question is so you went from teaching in a Navy schoolhouse to teaching kids. What's the biggest difference between those two between teaching to those audiences, and how has that transition gone to being a substitute teacher? How's that process been?
Well, that's a great question. The kids are tougher. Actually, it was both Marine Corps and Navy schoolhouse. That's I'm probably still going through that transition, but I could definitely tell the difference. Like, was it one of my first days as a substitute teacher was like honors, like social studies or honors world history at the high school. And these kids were so smart. They were asking relevant questions, and I think we were talking about Saudi Arabia, and there was a student teacher present, and I'm like, well, yeah, I've been to Saudi Arabia a couple times. What do you want to know? And they're like, well, is it like, I'm like, yeah, no, you're restricted as if you're, you're not allowed to just walk around there without somebody with the government minding you. And they're like, really? Why? I'm like, well, it's very, closest, it's like they are Islamic, what do you call theocracy, so, but yeah, I think the question is, yeah, I'm still going through that transition. Adult learning versus secondary secondary education is definitely, it's a different thing. There's different psychology with it, with the kids, a different, the developmental level. But then, gosh, I mean, I think I substituted at a, for a, basically special education class, which is probably half of the class was probably just probably not even, shouldn't even be in special education. They still had some serious behavioral issues. But yeah, that is big. There's a big difference between teaching honors, high school, AP history to teaching, the general population, to say. So, and I'm glad I don't have to do high school over again. So.
Yeah, that's a huge pivot that you did. Garrett says thank you. I'd want to open it up to anybody else who has questions too. Jeff, go ahead.
Alex, I just want to say that my paternal grandfather was in the Marine Corps. He served in World War II in the Pacific. And I mean, I could connect in that regard to your story, and the fact that it's being in the Marines is, it's not a very easy business. I mean, being in the armed forces is never really an easy business, but it's I mean, that's the only thing I just wanted to say about that. And and thank you again for serving our country.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for recognition. Yeah. I think it was difficult not being there a lot when my son was getting older and going through a lot of, diagnoses. And then when I would come back, I would have to be caught up to speed, or else I would not help to contribute for a therapeutic environment at home. That was difficult. I mean, it was frustrating for me because, so there would be some times when Tracy and I would get into it, and I'm like, oh, that's right, I wasn't here, so I don't know. So, yeah, challenging. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being so honest about that and your story. I mean, and I love that I just want to say that I love that your theme was like resiliency. For today, I feel like I needed to hear that, and I know our community needs to hear that. Especially, going year 3 of the pandemic and the state of the world right now. And you nailed it. I mean, well, I was like writing all of my notes down of like focusing on what you can control, and it's all about mindset and don't ever quit. And I love that little quote that you learned from somebody else of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. I love that. And it's just, and focusing inwards, being patient and kind with yourself. And I can see that you have that quality, and that's how you've been able to do your job and also focus and ground your family throughout this time. And I mean, I have all the utmost respect to you and Tracy and your partnership, and it's so strong, I could tell. And I'm just really grateful. Like, you have so much life experience that is, like, you talk about it so casually, but this is like, the more you say, the more I'm drawn in, and I just want to ask you a bunch of questions about, all that you've experienced. So thank you for sharing today, and it means a lot to us.
I just want to say, look, I'm not the expert on resiliency. I just can tell you what I've gone through. I'm just a guy trying to get by and the best I can, and not doing any harm, and hopefully doing good, and And, you know, everybody goes through that. So I'm not the expert, Rebecca. That's a caveat there. That's just what I've gone through.
I know you're not, and I'm just respecting your experience. That's, you should, you know, honor that. We need to honor that you took those lessons away, you know, and of what resiliency really is and how we can use that in our own lives. Like, I'm very grateful that we could learn from you today about that, and re-checking in with ourselves during this time where it's so needed. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex, I think the way that you did the lunch and learn today is exactly what I was trying to tell you. Is just by being who you are and sharing your thoughts and sharing what experiences came forth for you today is the thread that makes the lunch and learns continue to be something we value and our community values. We, you know, we look at viewership when we send out by email a replay of the lunch and learn. We're looking at the open rates, and just like we do when we send out, you know, our neuroscience conference speakers. And so it's one thing that's really we're counting as a blessing is that people are opening up both the lunch and learn speakers and the neuroscience conference speakers. So it validates us to keep you know, doing the lunch and learns, using them as a resource, and continuing to work really hard on our neuroscience conference as a way to put forward the autism voice, the voice of the neurodiverse community, to the really recognized autism researchers. A lot of times what I already believed, we are hearing on a whole different level, is that they're not in tuned enough to people who are neurodiverse and on the autism spectrum. I'm talking about the global autism researchers. So that's something that I'm really, you know, continuing to put my time and talent and treasure into, as they say. But I'm glad, because the 2 years, you know, I was back on the East Coast with you, it's going to keep bringing me back there. Garrett's, you know, still of course in DC, and I want to continue those relationships and building on them. And I love that part of it. I get to see you and Tracy usually when I'm back there too. So that's an added blessing. But I think, you know, one of the things that I really want you to know in my closing thoughts to you today is just that there's not a lot of fathers that I've been involved with in the 19 years of Autism Tree that touched me as always trying to, I don't even know if connect is the word I'm looking for. I just feel like if I play in my head all the parent mentor events, I feel like you were at most of them, even though I know you were deployed sometimes. I never felt like, even when you were deployed and Tracy was there, I always know that you are very, it is part of like, almost like your mission. Like I always felt like you weren't just showing up, you're like bringing forth, you know, your whole self. And like, I want you to know, I always felt your energy, not just being present, but your energy. And that's a differentiator. I mean, and you were talking about before the pandemic, but like, I don't feel like I see that as a whole. If I was to look at the whole 19 years, you know, I just feel like a lot of times people do just show up. And maybe it's just because the nature of Autism Tree is that there's a lot of challenge and struggle going on. And we're, you know, we're the warm hug, we're the family, we want to be like coming home. But having said that, sometimes when you're at home, you just plop down, put your feet up, and want everyone to just kind of bring your favorite foods in a blanket. So it's very important to me for you to know that I don't remember you ever being like that, Alex. You know, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. And sometimes, you know, that's something that I'm trying to say to our team and my own little family is like, we need to each, including my own self, stop being our worst critic. We need to each start being our most loyal supporter. So I think you did an amazing job today, and I feel grateful for everything you shared. I hope you'll give everybody big kisses at your family. And we usually take a group picture with you, so we got to do that.
Yes. Thank you. I think that's the perfect time to wrap up. Lupe and Garrett, I'd love to see your faces. If you can turn your cameras on, we'll take a group picture. And anybody else, you're totally welcome to be a part of our picture. I'll do a countdown. All right. Just smile at the camera. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Got it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Alex.
Take care, guys.
Rebecca, can you stay on with me?
Sure.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Lupe. Bye, Karen. There we go. Bye, Alex.
Oh, can you see why I love Alex?